This is Green Street, the Environmental Health Show, greenstreetnews.org, Patti and Doug Wood, and our worldwide team of experts here every week to bring you up to date on what's going on that you need to know to keep yourself and your family safe and healthy in this increasingly toxic world. Welcome back. They say you are what you eat, and these days, climate scientists are trying to point out that the health of the planet itself depends on what we eat. It turns out that the choices we make in that department are one of the biggest, if not the biggest, drivers of climate change. It's just one more reason so many people around the world are turning to a largely or entirely plant-based diet. There have always been concerns about animal welfare, of course, and many studies showing the health benefits of a plant-based diet. So our show today is called Every Bite You Take, and you'll want to hear what our guest has to say about plant-based diets. That's coming up in just a few minutes here on Green Street, but first, some of the headlines of the week. Patti, what do you got for us today?
This first piece is very disturbing. Apparently, the United States has quietly sent letters to a handful of countries urging them to vote against a global treaty that includes limits on plastic production and plastic chemical additives, just as another round of UN negotiations is starting in Geneva, Switzerland.
Really?
As a result of the letter, hopes for a global treaty that tackles the full life cycle of plastic pollution, from the production of polymers to the disposal of waste, have dimmed as delegates gather for what was supposed to be the final round of negotiations.
Way to go, United States. Get right in there and spoil it for everybody.
Significant divisions remain between oil-producing countries, which have strongly opposed any caps on virgin plastic production, and parties such as the EU and small island states, which advocate for limits as well as stronger management of plastic products and hazardous chemicals. The U.S. letter reads in part, quote, "We will not support impractical global approaches such as plastic production targets or bans and restrictions on plastic additives or plastic products that will increase the costs of all plastic products that are used throughout our daily lives."
It's all about money, right? Don't get in the way of our
100%.
profits. We're making money on plastic. Get out of the way.
That will increase the cost of all plastic products that are used throughout our daily lives. These are the plastic products that are winding up in the placentas of pregnant women. Babies in this country and all over the world are being born with plastic already in their bodies. And we all have plastic in our bodies.
But we're making money, Patti.
Yeah, I know, but the medical community is really, really... They say things like, this is scary.
Yeah.
Right? Medical community doesn't say things, this is scary. They don't really know enough. They know about impacts of plastic on the heart and other major organs, but they're not really sure what it's doing.
Yeah. Wow. Way to go, U.S.
So a U.S. State Department spokesperson said that instead of a global treaty, each country should take measures according to its own national interests and goals. Each country should take measures.
Because plastic stays, within the country. Plastic doesn't go anywhere. Can you imagine?
This is plastic in our food supply, in our water, in our air, in our fish especially. OMG.
All right, what else you got?
Well, none of it is really great news, but I think that this is timely, and we should be talking about wildfires and the smoke that's coming off those fires that is actually drifting across the United States.
Goes thousands of miles.
Yeah. Exposure to wildfire smoke is a growing health problem across the country as climate change increases the risk and intensity of wildfires, and smoke from those drifts thousands of miles downwind.
There you go.
Just what you said.
Yeah.
And here's what you need to know about the health risks and how to protect yourself. Scientists track air quality with the Air Quality Index, or AQI, which incorporates different pollution sources like ozone and fine particulate matter. Many scientists consider a level under 50 to be acceptable, although others point out that the index doesn't capture many smaller contaminants.
Yeah.
Right. But on a smoky day when AQI levels reach 100 to 200, scientists say the exposure to the fine particulate matter is similar to smoking a quarter to half a pack of cigarettes a day.
Holy Caruso.
Yeah. This week, some areas in the east, including New York, are witnessing levels of around 150. Wildfire smoke is hazardous for everyone, but it's especially dangerous for some people, including children and older adults, pregnant women, and anyone with pre-existing health problems, especially with respiratory problems.
Yeah.
Children can also be especially vulnerable because they breathe in more air and therefore more smoke relative to their body size. Pregnant people should also take care. There's growing evidence that wildfire smoke exposure is linked with higher chances of preterm birth and lower birth weights, and outcomes sometimes linked with health issues later in life. So how to protect yourself? Stay indoors with the windows tightly shut. Limit your physical activity. Run an air filter if you have one. If you have to go outside, consider wearing an N95 mask, which effectively blocks most tiny particles from getting into your lungs if worn correctly. No level of exposure to wildfire smoke is completely safe, but toxicologists have a saying, the dose makes the poison. But it's really about how much and how long you're exposed. That means anything you can do to limit your exposure is a good thing.
Gee whiz.
I didn't see a lot of people with masks on.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, and I was out and about yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was all over the place, actually.
All right, well, I have a little news item here, which is also not good news, which is that ultra-processed foods are now accounting for 55% of the calories the average American consumes every day, according to a new report from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The finding is generally in line with other studies in recent years that demonstrate how ultra-processed foods have become a fixture of the American diet. So more than half of the calories that people eat are coming from processed foods. Young people consume more calories from these products than adults do, nearly 62% compared with 53% according to the new report. Studies have identified the industrially produced foods as risk factors for a range of chronic diseases. Ultra-processed foods are made up almost entirely of substances extracted from other foods or synthesized in laboratories and typically contain many additives such as sugar, sodium, emulsifiers, and preservatives. Burgers, baked goods, savory snacks, and sweetened beverages were 4 of the top 5 sources of calories from ultra-processed foods. So there you go. Americans are eating more and more of this processed food.
I have to tell you that I had to go to a Walmart yesterday because I needed something in particular that only they had. It was for a grandchild, of course, right?
Of course.
Okay, so I've actually never been in a Walmart, and so this was really, really fascinating to me. When people were doing their grocery shopping in there, there was no, in this particular store, there was no fresh food. I mean, everything was just packaged in the aisle, just along with all the synthetic carpets and the toys and the plastic, everything. Everything was plastic, and if it wasn't made of plastic, it was packaged in plastic.
Yeah.
Everything, including all the food. All of it. There was an entire aisle just for chewy and gummy candy.
An aisle?
An aisle. You know, the aisles are marked, baking needs, cereals, whatever. Chewy and gummy candy. A whole aisle marked.
But it's cheap, Patty, and their whole motto is, spend less and live better.
Oh, my God. It was actually frightening, and it ties right in with what you were just talking about.
Yeah. All right. We'll be right back with the rest of our show.
Over the past 50 years or so, there has been a remarkable shift in the way we eat and the kinds of food we consume. Americans rely more and more on factory foods or fast food or ordering in, and less on preparing our own. But there's been another shift as well, smaller but rapidly growing. And that is a shift to plant-based foods as consumers begin to understand the cumulative impact of their food choices, not only on their health, but on the fate of our world. Dr. Zahra Kassam is a radiation oncologist in Ontario, Canada, and founder of Plant-Based Canada, a non-profit organization that provides evidence-based education on the benefits of whole food plant-based nutrition for health, sustainability, and planetary well-being. Zahra serves as a food advisor to the Canadian Coalition for Green Healthcare and is a member of the National Advisory Committee on Planetary Health for the Royal College of Physicians and Surgeons of Canada. Doug and I spoke with Dr. Kassam earlier this week, and we started our conversation talking about her background and how she became involved in the plant-based food movement. Here's our conversation with Dr. Zahra Kassam.
So I came into it from an ethical perspective. I'd been vegetarian for many years from an emotional position that I didn't want to kill animals. And then in 2013, myself and my two sisters, who I'm very close to, who are also vegan, started reading into it. So we realized that the egg industry, the dairy industry was just as cruel, maybe more so than the meat per se industry. It's all, of course, completely connected. So in 2013, we became vegan. And that reading opened up this whole path of the evidence-based benefits of plant-based nutrition for individual health and for planetary health. So that led us down the rabbit hole. I took several university courses. I became board certified in lifestyle medicine through the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, which, as you know, one of the central pillars is whole food plant-based nutrition. So that was what opened my eyes up to it. Myself as an oncologist, I realized that 50% of all cancers are due to our lifestyle behaviors, of which nutrition is a big piece. And then it became imperative to start educating people on this, because we realized that the public is not educated on this. My health professional colleagues are not educated on this.
Not at all, right?
Not at all. And right. You have great pioneers in America, and we also have great people in Canada, but there didn't seem to be a place to network and communicate and collaborate in a bigger sense. So that's when I formed Plant-Based Canada as a platform to highlight plant-based nutrition, to have a place to network, and hopefully to build community in Canada as well.
That's great.
As a radiation oncologist, I'm interested in your statistic that you think, 50% of all cancers are related to lifestyle, and nutrition or diet being a major component of that. So can you just talk a little bit more about what the data shows on that?
So we know from international cancer organizations such as the World Cancer Research Fund, American Institute of Cancer Research, that 40 to 50% of all cancers are driven by our lifestyle behaviors. And that will include tobacco use, alcohol use, whole food plant-based nutrition or nutrition as a cause, physical activity, being overweight, stress. So when we look at nutrition, there are a number of studies looking at this. We actually have decades of data, as you know already, on the benefits of plant-based nutrition for multiple non-communicable diseases, such as cardiovascular disease, such as cancer. And our two top causes of death are cardiovascular disease, number one, and cancer, number two. And in Canada, cancer has overtaken cardiovascular disease and is now the number one cause of death. And if we look at some of the studies, we see that nutrition probably reduces the incidence of cancer in around the 15% level. And we have some great studies. We have the Adventist Health Study 2. We have the EPIC Oxford Study 2. And these large cohorts of participants have about a third of their participants who are vegetarian or vegan. And that makes them ideal participants cohorts to study the effect of diet on health outcomes. And you can see that being vegan will reduce your risk of cancer by about 18%, being vegetarian by about 11% or so. And if you look at specific cancers within that, both of these studies showed that for hormone-specific cancer, such as breast cancer, such as prostate cancer, you saw an even higher reduction in the order of around 30%. We have a very large randomized control study, the Women's Health Institute study, which is the largest randomized study for looking at cancer outcomes. In fact, the most expensive one, because as we know, these are really expensive to do. And they looked at about 50,000 postmenopausal women, followed them for about 20 years. And they randomized the groups between standard of care, and then the intervention group was told to eat more fruits and vegetables, more whole grains, and reduce their total fat. And that group, that intervention group, reduced their risk of dying from breast cancer and their risk of dying overall. And that also showed benefit for diabetes as well. So we have a number of studies supporting this, and it's now in our cancer guidelines. So the American Institute of Cancer Research, World Cancer Research Fund, they produce these wonderful guidelines, and they say for cancer reduction, the best diet is one that is rich in fruits and vegetables, whole grains, beans and other legumes. And they talk about plant-based diets. And you only have to go, just yesterday I was looking actually that on the American Institute of Cancer Research website, and it was showing all the different foods that reduce cancer risk. And they talk about a plant-based diet. So we've come a long way. It's in our guidelines, not only our cancer guidelines, it's in our cardiology guidelines, our diabetes guidelines. It's in our country-based national guidelines as well. Canada Food Guide, where I live, is one of the best country-based food guidelines. And if you look at the plate, it is plant-based. More than 85% is plant-based. Half the plate is fruits and vegetables, a quarter is whole grains, a quarter is protein, of which they specifically say choose plant proteins more often and every day. So that makes it a plant-based plate. So we have all the data there. The missing piece is now translating it into practice. And that is where we have to do better on educating our health professionals, getting all this information into health professional education, getting it in on the ground, moving our hospital food to more plant-based offerings. We all know how terrible hospital food is, this place of healing.
Couldn't be worse.
Yeah, well, and
Right.
you're up against one of the biggest industries in the world as well. I mean, you're up against big agriculture, I guess we call it, where there's a tremendous amount of money that's involved in selling meat to people.
Right.
So,
and you see these, wonderful reports speaking just to your point, Merchants of Doubt, which shows the tactics similar to the big oil, big tobacco. And we know that the animal agriculture industry hire PR companies to specifically go after. So, for example, the Eat Lancet Commission, which produced such incredible work on, the planetary health diet, they were specifically targeted, even personal attacks, to the point that the people involved in that didn't want to continue being involved in that. That report just came out very recently. So yes, you're absolutely right. We're up against a big intentional actions to discredit plant-based diets, plant-based foods in general. And unfortunately, we're seeing the effects of that.
So 100% everything you're saying here, but I'd like to go back to these hormonally driven cancers for a minute and not just focus on the food themselves, but on all of the drugs and, hormones that are given to animals to produce more, produce it faster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And, so can you talk a little bit about those, what I would consider environmental, contributors to a non-plant-based diet or to a, an animal food diet?
Absolutely. So we know that there's so many pieces in response to that question. So we know that red meat is a probable carcinogen. We know that processed meat is a carcinogen, group 1 carcinogen. In 2015, the World Health Organization stated that. We know that not just those two, but all animal foods contain the antibiotics, estrogens, for example. If we had meat or dairy-based meal, our estrogen level in our body would go up. And so that may be one of the reasons that meat is associated with an increased risk of cancer. There's other reasons as well. The fact that red meat and processed meat actually causes DNA damage. We know that antibiotic use in the animal agriculture industry is huge. 70 to 80% of all our antibiotics that we produce are used in the animal agriculture industry, just as you said, to increase the growth of animals, because this is an industry, and to reduce infections because they are living in such filth and awful conditions. And that is driving antibiotic resistance. And we know that the World Health Organization has stated antibiotic resistance as one of the top 10 global threats to humanity. And we're fast approaching a post-antibiotic era, and we're not developing new antibiotics to counteract that. And for my patients who have cancer and who do get infections, we're seeing that it's affecting our patients now. We're in that stage where we're seeing infections that have resistances to multiple antibiotics. So there's many levels to your question. And what is it about animal foods that contribute to cancer, whether it's those hormonal driven ones or not, but the increased estrogen exposure, the fact that in your body eating meat will increase your insulin-like growth factor, which causes proliferation of cells and reduces natural cell death, the fact that they're carcinogens. the fact that they lack any other good nutrients. They lack fiber. They lack all the other phytonutrients that are so helpful, the antioxidants, for example. So there's many reasons that meat is associated with cancer. We know that meat can contribute, that high fat diet that comes from eating a high meat diet can contribute to obesity, which then increases your risk of cancers, including the female and male hormone driven specific cancers like prostate cancer and breast cancer. So there's many levels to that aspect.
One of the things we hear a lot when we tell people we're on a plant-based diet, they go, "Oh, how do you ever get protein?" So talk a little bit about that, if you would. I think the meat industry has been very successful in planting this idea in people's brains that that's the only way you're going to get protein, right, is to eat meat.
So if we want to be 100% plant-based, we not only can survive, but we can absolutely thrive. We know the major dietetic organizations say that being 100% plant-based, being vegan or vegetarian, a well-planned vegan and vegetarian diet is appropriate for all stages of life, from cradle to grave. There are certain aspects you have to take more account of for children, for pregnant and lactating women, perhaps for older people as well who may need additional protein, but it's very easy to get adequate protein on a plant-based diet. So excellent sources of protein include your beans and your lentils and other legumes, your nuts and seeds, your whole grains. All plant foods contain protein, and all plant foods contain all the essential amino acids. It's just in different levels in different plant foods. So if you're having a varied plant-based diet, you will have no problem getting all your protein requirements. During those stages that I mentioned, such as pregnancy, lactation, when we're older, we might need to pay special attention to having a protein source at every meal, but it's not difficult. And being told you have to have a well-planned diet is not specific to a vegan, vegetarian diet. It's for all diets. You can have a very bad omnivore diet. You still have to have a well-planned omnivorous diet if that's what you choose to follow.
Food is such a personal thing. People seem to bristle at the idea of being told that what they're eating is a problem.
Right.
How do you gently lead people down this path?
It's really interesting, and you're right. That does seem to be the biggest barrier. And I think planting seeds is really important. And maybe our discussion with people is not going to bring about their change. Maybe you're going to see those barriers go up straight away. We just have to sit with that discomfort as the person trying to impart this information and hope that we're just part of the process that will plant those seeds. And people are at different levels of being open to this. And we can, for me, for example, the people I speak to on a day-to-day basis are people who have a diagnosis of cancer. They're very open to hearing about these things. And so I get much less pushback from my patients. And the idea that it's very personal, it's relating to how we have been brought up, it's related to our culture, this idea that somebody might be telling you what to do, and none of us like to be told what to do. So I think, we have to be gentle, we have to be compassionate. I always remember how, I didn't become vegan till I was 42. So all that time, perhaps people were trying to tell me and I wasn't listening. I do remember thinking at one point being vegan was extreme. So I hope that we can talk to people compassionately in the way that I would want to be spoken to as well. And when we talk about culture, culture is a set of norms that the community at each specific time have decided is best at that point in time. So by definition, it's changing. So we are allowed to change our cultural norms. We are allowed to change our paradigms of thinking. And I really hope that instead of the current paradigm of the meat-based paradigm where every meal is meat-based, no meal is complete without meat, we can switch to the paradigm where we think about what is best for our health, what is best for our planet, instead of thinking about what are the limits within which we can continue to exploit animals and nature, which is our current paradigm. So I hope we can change things, but I think we just have to keep talking. And, one story I give is one session I had with one of my patients, and they were absolutely not open to hearing about plant-based nutrition at all. And I sat there and I thought, well, I'm just going to keep going for a bit. And then it was very clear at the end they were not really on board. But their son then at the end of the session said to me, can you just write down those resources? I have diabetes and I'm going to go and look into it. So you don't know who's listening. We just have to keep going.
It's great.
I would love to just get specific about, fish and poultry and so on, but we're going to consider all of that meat, right?
Animal food.
It's animal foods. Okay. So can we just talk a little bit? I know that this is not your specialty, but I'm sure you know more than most of our listeners about how this is impacting the planet, this reliance on meat. I'm just thinking of one example, which is, cutting down the rainforest to graze old dairy stock so that they can then slaughter it and use it for hamburgers. So how is this whole meat-based or animal protein-based diet worldwide impacting our planet?
There is no human activity that has a broader and deeper impact on the planet, negative impact on the planet, than our food system. And it's left out of most of the climate discussions. And we know that, we concentrate on climate, but that's not the whole story for planetary health. So even just in climate discussions, there was a study from the US I think it was last year or the year before, showing that in all media reports on climate, only 7% included food. And food impacts climate. It is the leading cause of biodiversity loss and species extinction. You've mentioned deforestation, so land use change. 75% of tropical deforestation is caused by animal agriculture for exactly those reasons that you mentioned. Ocean acidification, water and land pollution. So our food system is central to our health crisis, is central to our climate crisis, our other ecological crises as well. Contributes about a third of all greenhouse gases. About 60% of those come from the animal agriculture industry. The animal agriculture industry contributes 30% of all meat. We know that methane has a much greater warming potential than carbon dioxide, but it has a shorter lifespan of about 12 years. So if we can reduce that dramatically, we can really help buy time to then think about other ways to reduce carbon dioxide. So we're not talking about that. We're not talking about the fact that 30% of all methane comes from animal agriculture. 70% of all freshwater use is for animal agriculture. Half of all habitable land is used for food, of which 80% is used for animal agriculture, yet it provides only 18% of our calories. It's so inefficient, it's so destructive. It's one of the leading causes, I would say the leading cause of antibiotic resistance, as we've already talked about. It's one of the leading causes of pandemic risk. And there's just so many aspects to it. So, and if we look at, the UN IPCC report, if we look at the Eat Lancet Commission, so for example, the Eat Lancet Commission says that the single biggest lever we can pull is food for human health and environmental sustainability. So the single biggest action we can take as an individual is to move towards a plant-based diet. We will reduce greenhouse gases, we will reduce land use, reduce freshwater use, we will reduce biodiversity loss, we will improve our health as well. And of course, there's the whole compassion towards animals. And to your point about, the rainforest being one of our carbon sinks, so is the ocean floor. And our bottom trawling for fish consumption is actually, impacting the biggest carbon sink we have, which is the ocean floor. So it is across all animal products, indeed.
Dr. Zahra Kassam, radiation oncologist and founder of the nonprofit Plant-Based Canada. You can learn more about Dr. Kassam and her work at our website, greenstreetnews.org. That's going to do it for our show today. Many thanks to our guest, Dr. Zahra Kassam, and all of you who listen to and support our Green Street show. Patti and I will be back next week with another edition of Green Street. Thanks for listening.